All right, folks. I think it's about time we talk about something called discernment because when I spend just a little bit of time online, I can see where there is an obvious lack of it. And we just so happen to be at a time where I think it is absolutely critical that we have it, especially now when we're in this technological age where the advancement of AI continues to march forward. And in that, it is going to become more and more difficult to distinguish what is true, what's reality from what's not, and what's, AI. And at the progression of this thing and at the speed in which it increases, it's not going to be very long until your senses are going to be so confused that they just can simply not distinguish and recognize what's real and what's not. And that's just the facts. We have to face these facts. That's where we're headed. Whether you want to go there or not, believe me, I don't. I don't like the direction that I feel I'm being taken. But we are all on this ride, whether you want to go or not. That's the direction we're all headed. And I'm telling you, it is absolutely critical that we go into this time with this thing called discernment, because if we are lacking it, we're going to be in big trouble. And it is obvious to me that we are lacking it. You have a lot of people that just listen to whatever the TV says. You have a lot of people that have recognized that the lies and the agendas behind the mainstream. And so they've turned their eyes away from the television and got on their device. And it's just, oh, well, here now I'm on this, and they're alternative sources, so they must be true. And so people are being fed lies even there. And so I don't think discernment is something that we all just naturally have, unfortunately. I wish it was just a quality that came with knowledge and wisdom of, an age of years like everything else, but I don't. I don't think it is. See, I think discernment is something that comes from God. And the only way that we get it is when we go on a wholehearted search for truth that ultimately leads us to God, that we can gain this discernment spiritually that will help guide us through truth as we explore and investigate what this world actually is all around us. And I think that the picture that's being painted is giving us a glimpse into what that actually looks like now. And for a lot of people, you have so many people that aren't even paying attention to any of it. And some of that's just naivety. And then another big part of it is just people want to stay in their fairy tale and they don't want to believe that this is what is actually happening and this is what is the reality. But to be in that ignorance intentionally is to be in disservice to your humanity. We need to recognize what these things are. And so, as we are surrounded by so much information, and I mean, it's just the explosion of information is insane. There's so much that an individual could never even grasp it all. So that's why we live in a time of headlines and, these little quick takes and all this stuff, because there's just so much of it out there, you know? And we need to understand that as this media landscape changes, not only is there obvious lies in the mainstream because there's agendas and narratives to be pushed there, but for some reason, although the natural information in itself about these things is evil and vile enough in its own nature that it doesn't need any help, there are still those that I will never understand, but are obviously drama queen content creators, drama queen and king content creators that want to stir it up even more, and dramatize the situation even more and add lies to what's already bad enough. And all that does is honestly a disservice to the actual victims of these things, because it just helps, muddy the waters. And there doesn't need to be any help in that area, because every time a dump of information like this happens on this big of a scale, there is also a disinformation campaign that goes right out along with the truth, almost as if it's a big brother watching out for its little brother to make sure no one gets too close. And it muddies the waters and makes it so the visibility is so low that the average person, as they look into these things, they just think, I don't even know, I don't know what's true from what's false, and I just can't do this. So they just give up on it all. And then, unfortunately, oftentimes everything just gets lumped into this conspiracy theory thing, when in fact there are a lot of truths in there, and you better understand them, because it is actually what's going on in this reality, and it is actually what this world really is all about. And so you need to understand, as we live in this information age and you are being bombarded from every direction every day with information, you need to have discernment to be able to pick out and weed through the truth and the lies. And it's absolutely critical that we have that today, especially as we continue to move forward in this thing, And so you have all these wars and rumors of wars. You got wars waging now in Mexico. You got talk of wars with Iran. You have, the ongoing war in Ukraine. And there's just wars everywhere. But there is absolutely one war that you can be sure of. And it's the one for your mind. And it's been waging since you were born. And the thing is, for a lot of people, this information, they're numb to it because they've been desensitized to it since a very young age, because we've all been programmed and desensitized through this same system. And it has led us to this point where some people are just like, and others are just so naive and just can't go there because they don't want to wreck their little fairy tale world they think they live in. But ultimately, that will come to an end for everybody eventually. And if you can't feel that things are culminating, then you're not paying attention. And we really need to be paying attention. The discernment that's going to be required here, I just don't think our own understanding is enough for us to be able to recognize the truth from the falsehoods. And ultimately, that discernment comes from God. And it's through God's Spirit, through our spirit, looking through our spiritual eyes, that we can begin to recognize those truths. And as we do, what you will see is that the reality here is this isn't just a physical one. And these things that are going on, as sick and vile as they are, there is an evil undertone here of negative energy that comes from somewhere else. And this is a spiritual existence just as much as it is a physical one. And so when you look at the people involved in this recent dump, who are they? Well, they're the most powerful people in the world, the most rich and elite people in the world. Well, how do you think they achieved this? This isn't new. This power has been coming from the dark side since the beginning of time. And we need to, likewise, lean into God and pull from that positive, divine, wholesome energy that's found in there, to pull power from that so that we can battle against this stuff. Because I'm telling you, if we walk away from this time right now that we're in, shrugging our shoulders and acting like there was nothing to see here, well, then we deserve everything else we got coming to us, because we are just simply sheep headed for the slaughter. And so what do? Well, we need to rebel against this evil. And how do we do that? It's by turning to the opposite of it, which is God. And as we unite and do that collectively, there is power there, just like there's power over there. But this power wins in the end. And so who do you think has the true power? There is a line being drawn in the sand, and that line is becoming more and more defined as time goes on. And it's obvious who's on that side of the line. But unfortunately, for those who want to just hang out on the line, eventually you will get lumped in with these sick people. And so we need to pick a side and choose who it is that we're going to be following here. And as we do, I feel like as we do, and people wake up from this stupor that they've been in, because that's what it is. People begin to see the truth and what's actually taking place here, and how that we have turned away from God, and that's why society looks the way that it does now. And so the only way to rebel against it, and the only way to get some of our power back, is to lean back into God. We have to. We have to. Because the bigger question here, with all this information that has just been released, the bigger question to me is why? Why do they want you to know this? Because you can bet they want you to know. They want you seeing it. They want you to know about it. If you think for a second that this was because there was a couple congressmen who were demanding transparency, come on. We need to wake up from that nonsense, okay? The reason you're seeing it is because it was strategically placed at this time in front of your eyes and everybody's eyes to see. They want you to know what's going on. And so that's the bigger, scarier question. Why? Because what's going on is insane. It's insane. And so I don't claim to have all the answers why. I have a few ideas. One is simply to see how we respond. Because if we just walk away from this moment in time without there being some drastic change that takes place that's noticeable to them, that there is a rebellion going on. And I'm not saying a physical rebellion. We need to battle the spiritual with the spiritual here. And so that's what the rebellion looks like to me. There's things we can do in the physical. You know, just go look at my Cookie Monster video from a few weeks ago. And that's just a little piece of the puzzle. But the bigger picture is it's a spiritual battle. And so we need to pick a side, and we need to rely on that power, you know, those positive vibes, that positive energy, that higher frequency, higher vibrational energy that comes from God, as we're being bombarded with all this low vibrational, low frequency energy that's coming from this obvious darkness that's all around us. Hopefully we can see that now. I mean, I know people have woken up in droves since, 2019, 2020, which is a great thing. But we cannot rely on our own understanding here, folks, as we move forward, because it's in our human nature, this whole information bias thing. We love our opinions to be, what's solidified on the daily, and that's what happens through our algorithms. You're just constantly fed that which you already believe. And so we need to be able to look at both sides and all sides and make good, reliable conclusions. And I feel like the only way to do that, because of these flaws in our human nature, is to lean into God for that discernment. The discernment is key. It's key. We're going to have it. And like I said, I feel like the only way you get it is if you go on a quest for truth that is wholehearted. I mean, when I did it initially, 16 years ago now, I think, it consumed me. It was the only thing I cared about. And I feel like when you come at it fully open and ready to receive whatever it is, no matter what, because it was, for me, paradigm shifting. It shattered my worldview. But I was open to it because I just wanted the truth, no matter what it was. And I feel like God began to show it to me. And I feel like He will show it to all of us if we look to Him and look to His understanding and His wisdom in these matters. Then through our spirit, we can see through these spiritual eyes and recognize what's true and what's not. And there's so much more I could discuss here with this topic. There's many more things. I'd love to get more into the details of the mainstream and what I think could possibly be even happening there, because you have to be very reluctant these days who you listen to. And I'm just going to tell you, oftentimes, it's not the loudest voices. It's not the ones that have millions of followers. Because, unfortunately, that doesn't happen very often organically, at least from my point of view. And, coming into this whole content creation thing, it is so difficult. I just can't believe that it happens organically. Maybe I'm wrong there. But regardless, it doesn't change the fact that we need to be very careful who we're listening to. And we are at a time where we can give nobody the benefit of the doubt anymore. People who have been caught in lies, we cannot listen to those people anymore. And there's so many of them, especially with this. There were so many people saying, oh, there was nothing to see here. There's nothing. And now they're backpedaling. These people need to be shut right down. Do not listen to another word. And that's how we have to progress through this thing. And that's part of weeding out people who speak truth and who don't. So we're at a time now of no second chances. No second chances. No benefits of the doubt. We're done with all that. We're done with all that. We have to make sure that the voices we're listening to, we can trust in them. And as we move forward in this time, we have to have discernment. And so obviously, this is my journey. I've made it public now. And so I hope that you will join me on this. But this is a spiritual battle, folks. And so ultimately, what you need to do is follow God. Anyway, like I said, I plan on talking a lot more about this in the upcoming videos. So please, if this one has touched you, like it and subscribe to the channel. And until the next one, I'm Casper. This is Casper's Corner, and I'll see you there.